Welcome back to the channel. If you're liking these kind of down-to-earth movie reviews, I watch a lot of movies at AMC because I'm an AMC A-list subscriber, and I think it's a great value, especially for anybody who goes to the movies more than a couple times a month. The return on value is there. If you see 2 or more movies a month, definitely recommend AMC A-list. Last night they had Scream Unseen, so went to see that. There's some discussion in subreddit around what the possible movie could be. A lot of it was, is it The Hunting Matthew Nichols? Is it Faces of Death, which comes out in a couple weeks? There's some people who are hoping it was The Yeti, which also comes out in April. It was Hunting Matthew Nichols, which I saw a trailer once, and I did find the trailer slightly interesting, although I do like found footage movies to an extent. There are some good ones out there. I think the last one I saw that was really good was Strange Harvest. I believe that's on Netflix now. That one was a pretty good kind of cult documentary-esque investigation into this killer in California that plays as if it wanted to be real, but it is a documentary style horror movie, which was pretty good. It kind of kept you intrigued, especially with the interviews. Unfortunately, Hunting Matthew Nichols is not one of the good found footage movies. It tries to be the next Blair Witch Project without having any of the entertainment or interest value throughout the entire runtime. I think if this movie started out with its last 10 minutes and then went from there, they could have had a more interesting movie, because there are a couple interesting things that happen within the last 10 minutes of this film, but everything up into that is just, it's a slog. It's really hard to get to. There were some people within the screening who just got up and left about 15-20 minutes into the movie. Maybe they thought they were going to see The Yeti or maybe Faces of Death, but they got this one instead. This movie is about Tara Nichols, whose brother went missing 23 years ago on a Halloween Eve, which could have been something interesting they could have used, but it was just a day. Her brother and his friend went missing on Vancouver Island. They don't know what happened to him. There's some theories around, were they investigating some kind of paranormal activity out in the woods? Were they wanting to run away and go to Hollywood or go to Vancouver where their film industry is? Because her brother Matthew and his friend were into making little small movies with a Sony camera and recreating certain aspects of films, especially the Blair Witch Project, which also comes up a lot in this movie. It's mentioned a few times, and no, it is not as good as the Blair Witch. It doesn't hold up like the Blair Witch Project did, because that came out at a time where it was like one of the first found footage films back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and there's a lot of people who thought that movie was real. I think my mom was one of them who thought it was based on a true story, but it was not. It was just a really well done horror movie with found footage. This movie is directed by Markian Tariski, who also is the writer-director. He also stars in the movie as the documentarian person along with Tara. Looks like it's his first feature film directing. And then you also have Sean Harris Oliver. He wrote this, and also Letters from Stone Cold Killer, which I believe was a short film. Stars Miranda McDougall, who came from When Calls the Heart, which was some Hallmark show or movie. She was in an episode of The Flash and mainly does a lot of TV and short films. Markian Tarasik plays himself in the film. He's also from TV, movies, and television. And then you also have Ryan Alexander McDonald as the photographer or the videographer of this 3-person team doing this investigation. I guess the biggest thing to say is this movie is only 89 minutes long, but it definitely feels a lot longer than 89 minutes. I think I was going to go look at my watch about halfway through, decided not to, and then I could tell we were getting close to the end. Movie started at 7, was over before 9. That's including 25 minutes of the AMC's trailers and commercials, which is absurd as usual. Definitely feels longer than it actually is, and I don't think it even earns that runtime. It should maybe have been a short film. If they did a tight 15-20 minute short film, they would have had something there, because as I mentioned earlier, the last 10 minutes of the movie is the only time when anything really interesting happens. The movie basically follows Tara and this documentary crew going back to Vancouver Island, where she's wanting to investigate and figure out exactly what happened to her brother outside of the scenarios that the police and others assumed is going on. So her and her team do an interview with her mom, kind of give a little bit of history about what was going on around the time of the disappearance. There were some pointing fingers towards Matthew Nichols' friend Jordan and his family, who was being hesitant of joining the investigation even though they were part of it. So there's a lot of finger pointing of, okay, who was to blame. for their missing kids. They also talked to the detective, a few other people in the community that were around at that time. And there's nothing super interesting about any of these interviews. They're all pretty mundane, pretty boring. They don't really push the story forward. The only time the story gets pushed forward is when Tara and her team are doing their own investigation after they got access to all the police files and find some interesting things in the tapes that her brother and his friend left behind in regards to they are looking at some kind of hunting book. They were investigating this kind of ghost story figure that is in the area. And so that is the only time that any of this stuff is somewhat interesting. They do realize at some point that there's a missing tape that they find, and that shows more than what the detectives were leading on in regards to what happened to Matthew and Jordan. But they present it in a way where you don't get to see what's on the tape, and the only time that ever comes up is at the end of the movie within the last 10 minutes, where they show images and flashbacks really quick of what happened on the tape with Matthew and his friend Jordan. And when they do get that tape, it's Tara looking at it by herself. They have some footage of the director and the videographer recording her while she's watching this. You see expressions in her face. And then they go to a scene where the videographer and the director are also looking at this tape. They don't really say what's happening in it. It's a lot of footage that doesn't go anywhere. And it's just like the last few minutes of this missing tape that they were able to find shows what may have happened to them. But they don't go into detail within this part of the movie. The only time that ever comes up is at the end of the film within the last 10 minutes when Tara and the director are out in the woods trying to investigate where this cabin was that they were supposedly found at. And there is a lot of Blair Witch wannabe style stuff going on within that last 10 minutes and how they shot it. Yeah, it looks better than the Blair Witch, but it's also like almost 30 years newer in regards to technology that was around in the late 90s when they made that original movie. Unfortunately, if you're into found footage films, you might find some interest in here. I don't think it has much legs at the box office. It's probably going to end pretty quickly. And that's pretty much all there is to say about the movie. It was not great. It was boring. There's people who left in my auditorium when they watched it. And the acting wasn't the best. The writing wasn't the best. And the only kind of redeeming value of the movie was the last 10 minutes, which even that did not suffice for the other 75 minutes of slog that you had to go through. That definitely recommend a pass on it. I guess if you're bored one Sunday and you happen to have a Shudder description or it ends up on some streaming service, maybe you'll find something interesting here. There's much better found footage movies you should go watch. I'd recommend Hell House LLC, which I enjoyed the first one. The sequels they were all right. Within at least the Hell House stuff, all the lineage stuff and the kind of offshoot prequels were not great. Strange Harvest is another one that was great recently. So definitely pass on Hunting Matthew Nichols, 1 star.